Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karl Hendrich. I'm a Juniper system engineer working in the region, mainly focusing on the security matters. So whatever concerns firewalls, VPNs, IPsec, etc. You name it. That would be my focus. And today I'd like to discuss some security-related matters concerning mainly what's new in the SRX product series. At the beginning, there's going to be some slight intro into the topic. Then I'd like to speak about something called security intelligence, which is evolution of our NG firewall set. And then we'll move towards one slider about some particular product, particular Juniper box. And I'll spend one slide about automation, which was already touched by Uwe in the first slot. And last but not least, I'd like to tell you what are the possible next steps with the Juniper security. All right, what is this about? You might have heard from our competitors that Juniper is somehow pulling back from the security area, which is not true. Why would the data center and the high-end firewall number 2 pull back from the security? It doesn't make any sense. It's just a FUD. Please don't really listen to them. What we did, some major things over 2014 is 2 terabit firewall, so 100 interfaces all over, and investments into the security intelligence firewall evolution. All right. So what is the usual firewall reality? It's like this. There's a roadblock setting some rules. However, some smart guys might find a way around the roadblock. So nowadays security is about preventing these kind of alternative ways around the static roadblock. That's it. How we do the things? So we are solving the matters by using the best-in-class security. Juniper is a kind of vendor who is delivering a lot of nice building blocks, usually around switching, routing, and firewalling. And by that one, I don't necessarily say that you have to use Juniper all over. It doesn't make any sense. The best solutions are usually consisting of multiple vendor equipments. So probably you may consider to use the best-in-class DLP solution, the best-in-class antivirus, best-in-class host IPS, best-in-class sandboxing, best-in-class firewall, and possibly connect the building blocks together using either your own approach, some third-party approach. I mean, the security solutions need to talk together. There's a quite modern trend to have one-box solutions, device which has all the features I named inside. I mean, almost offering also cooking a coffee, preparing your dinner, etc. Doesn't make any sense. So, which makes, from our perspective, sense to get the desired scale and performance is to use the devices which are dedicated for the particular tasks. Regarding the performance and scale, there is one more stuff I'd like to mention. Usually, if you take the data sheet of some security platform, you are seeing tens of gigabits for firewall, tens of gigabits for IPS performance, gigabits for antivirus. But if you turn it on, if you enable all the features, the performance is dropping dramatically. And by that, I'm trying to say it's good to look for solutions which, if they are dropping, that they are not dropping that steep, and there is a way how to get back up to speed. So we at Juniper are manufacturing scalable firewalls based on some per computing technologies. So whenever you are enabling features and you have the feeling that it might not be simply enough, you put additional card, and then you are back on track with the performance. Last but not least, there is also aspect of high availability of the network. It's in Juniper DNA to assure the high availability networks, secure critical assets. So it's good to look into the attributes of the platform from perspective of HA, robustness, and resilience. Regarding evolution of the firewall, so we passed already a couple of years ago this NG firewall stuff. Today we are shipping technology called AppID 2.0. So we are capable of detecting various evasive applications running on whatever dynamic ports. And then we are either able to report the data being transferred. We are able to enforce the class of service, so to assure some traffic gets precedence while some traffic is put into the background. Also enforcement in terms of allowing or dropping, so the usual stuff is there. What we are moving to is dynamic adaptive platform, so this kind of solution able to receive the Intel data from outside, either from Juniper solution or whatever third-party equipment you imagine, using a simple approach. I'll discuss that one later on. So what is the usual Juniper security infrastructure? It consists of usually high-end SRX device in a position of internet firewall, data center firewall, having some proper management, possibly multi-tenant management, hypervisors, so virtual security for single tenant is being secured by virtual SRX platform, and multi-tenant environments are being secured by the virtual SRX as well. For the branch office connectivity, there's a whole bunch of small Juniper platforms out there, scaling from a couple of tens of megabits of encryption up to gigabits, if you like, and all these things can be managed centrally by the same management platform from perspective of security policies, platform configuration, etc. So it's whole, let's say, firewall, VPN, and NGSet technology, if you like. I was speaking about robustness before, so I guess you have seen this slide before a couple of times already. Just to recap a little bit, on the left side, you are seeing the traditional architecture within traditional firewall systems, let's call it that way. So you have basically some PC, and on top of the PC there is some software process, sharing probably the same resources with the control plane and with the data plane. So whenever there is something going wrong on the data plane side, either some flooding, either intended, unintended, you may lose access to management, which is bad. The day one Juniper design is about clearly separating the control plane up there and the forwarding plane, so that never ever the transit traffic, the traffic going through the box, is being touched by the control plane. That's very important in our designs. Couple of days ago, well, it's been like 2 weeks already, I got a call from customer, and they suffered some occasion in their network when there was 1 gig of ARP flood. So really tiny little ARP packets hitting the firewall on a G interface. You can imagine it was like 1.3, 1.4 million packets per second. If you have such a flood, you need to take some action. And if there was no dedicated control plane, they were lost. Like they would probably need to shut the ports, disconnect the cables, etc. So therefore, even for this kind of unforeseen occasions, it's really important to have separation of control and data. In terms of the product series as such, we are basically offering 2 or better 3 product series. The first one is so-called branch SRX, which is using software-based separation of the control and data plane based on the CPU core affinity. And then from SRX 1400 onwards, this is the high-end SRX series, clearly separating the control and data planes. So scaling from like 10G up to 2 terabits, if you like, in some artificial lab test. Somewhere in between, there is a Virtual SRX platform. I'll be spending a couple of slides about that one. We have released a new software version with interesting architecture and very interesting performance aspects. And just to give you some future outlook, we are looking into refreshing the branch SRX series further down the road, beginning 2016. And we are also planning to have some interesting enterprise edge platform somewhere there, and high-end SRX based on new architecture later 2016, maybe, subject to changes at any time. All right. Regarding SRX 5K evolution, what is the story about this slide? So when the SRX 5K was released, like 8 years ago, perhaps, yes, it's been a lot of time. It was a firewall offering 4 million sessions, some limited connections per second, like 300K, etc. But during the entire lifetime, that box was upgraded, or we offered an option to our customers to upgrade the platform. And these days, you can get out of the chassis system like 2 terabits, I was speaking about, or you can fine-tune other equipment for tasks like GI firewall, some high-density session capacity firewall, like 100 million concurrent sessions. And by end of the year, we are looking even into multiplying this figure by introducing some software change. So the bottom line is following. We are trying to protect investments of our customers by offering chassis systems where you can swap the cards, grow, and stay in touch with the network demands. Something quite new is a new Virtual SRX platform. In particular, we call it internally VSRX 2.0, or it could be also VSRX 15.1 X49. What is this about? It's obviously virtual firewall platform based on very similar architecture like Istvan was presenting. So if you remember, Istvan was speaking about MX routing engine with KVM hypervisor and Junos running on top of it. This is very similar. Essentially, instead of putting the virtual machine on a bare metal hardware, the virtual machine is running inside of the hypervisor, having some sort of nested virtualization, if you like. So meaning that the control plane is nested, however, the flow processing is straight to the hypervisor resources. To a certain extent, we can also use the bare metal resources. So if there is a server capable of technologies like SRIOV, we can achieve sort of direct memory access from the virtual machine to the PCI resources, assuming that there is appropriate network card, appropriate chipset, and thereby we can achieve really nice performance figures I'll discuss later on. So it's a modern virtual platform intended for VMware, ranging from 5.1 up to 6.0, or if you like, KVM. Further down the road, we are looking into releasing it for the Amazon Cloud, so which is implicating Xen, and also the Microsoft Cloud, which is implicating the Microsoft Hyper-V technology. All right. Probably one of the best parts is the overall performance of the virtual firewall. Colleagues of mine call that the industry fastest virtual firewall. If there is someone who knows something faster, some faster commercial product, raise your hand. What we basically did is that this is a performance of the previous VirtuSRX, so on UDP iMix test, the large packets, and it compares to the performance of the new VirtuSRX on either on large packets with the software bridge, VMXNet or VirtIO, both iMix large packets, and the dark blue bar is SRIOV mode, so the high performance SRIOV mode when the virtual platform is basically touching the virtual function of the NIC, so talking straight DMAs with the hardware. Quite remarkable, however, I'm a practical guy, so I looked at it from a different angle. This one is performance on 3.4 gigahertz test, obviously UDP. What I did, I took some server, which was, it feels like some site check a doctor, sorry. But I took 2.4 gigahertz server, and I achieved something like 8 gigabit per second on 2 TCP sessions. So instead of using UDP, I used TCP. And around 800K packets per second, which is quite remarkable on a virtual firewall. These slides will be publicly available, so you can check out the PPS figures in here, the gigs per second. And this particle test was pure software, so the VMXNet VMware virtual NIC. So no special hardware needed. The next test is using SRIOV, so the machine using the smart hardware, achieving close to or reaching 1.1 million packets per second on a TCP equaling to 11 gigs, which is, I think, quite remarkable. Now, the bottom line is following. If you transfer or you translate that one to the volume being transferred, you can get for a minute between 55 and 80 gigabyte of data transferred across the virtual platform. If you translate that one to 24 hours, it could be between 80 and 115 terabyte of data transfers on a virtual firewall. So quite remarkable, might be really usable even for some data center application, some computation pod security, etc. There are two remarks down there in the slides. So if you use faster CPU, the platform is handling the interrupts in a faster manner, and then it could go beyond that 1.1 million packets per second. So if there is something like 4 gigahertz zone CPU, it could be 1.5, 1.6, maybe. And the beauty about the virtual platform is following. If you have a high-density server with many cores, many network cards, it can kind of linearly scale in parallel. So each and every VirtuSRX is consuming precisely 2 CPU cores. One is for control, the second one is data. So if you have 24 cores, you can put 12 VirtuSRXs, kind of giving you the linear scale like I was presenting, depending whether there is a good enough capacity of the input-output cards. About use cases, so the first use case of the VirtuSRX could be some private cloud security, so individual departments having their own firewall, possibly with their own management, and the Virtual Director as a tool for bootstrapping the VirtuSRX. That Virtual Director application works essentially by contacting the vCenter, deploying a template, bootstrapping the VirtuSRX, and then central policies, central configuration can be deployed. Another use case, very obvious one, is the public and hybrid cloud, meaning that there are customer-specific resources in the cloud. Customer has own premises, and there is an IPsec VPN being built between the on-premises device and the cloud device. Next, service provider-like use case. could be following, that customer has rather some dump device on its location, maybe just a router, and the whole security is being done in the service provider premises. So some of the customers having just firewall service, someone equipped with UTM, web filtering, someone using application firewall, etc., etc. So customer-specific and scalable multi-tenancy by the service provider. All these things can be brought up with the help of our SDN controller, so Contrail. There are some real-life use cases where the Contrail is acting as the control plane for the whole bunch of equipment, virtualized equipment, like the virtual routers, doing the service chaining, etc. Another use case, I think more likely than the previous one, is the on-premises VirtuSRX. It's probably not a secret that already today you can take Juniper switch, the QFX 5100 device, and you can put VirtuSRX on top of the switch. So it's perfectly possible to have server, rather high-end access switching together with a virtual firewall at a premises site, connected to some service provider network, possibly providing even more services using some SDN approach like our controller. Last but not least, the fifth use case is Junos out of box, meaning that you can literally take one unit rack server and create some DMZ or hosting solution in a one rack unit. So web servers, database servers, a firewall, IPS, you name it. All the technologies packed in one rack unit, like pure software solution. All right, any questions regarding VirtuSRX and the platform? I'll be around later on, so if you want to see this performance, etc., the lab is alive. I'm happy to demonstrate that one, no problem at all. All right, let's move to some future outlook of the VirtuSRX. So, like I mentioned, we are looking into putting the VirtuSRX like some Amazon and Microsoft Cloud offering. Then we are looking into integrating the stuff with NSX. I'm wondering, are there any NSX customers? Someone running live NSX? No one with NSX? Yeah, I mean, it depicts the reality. And what we are looking at is even more performance by either scaling out, distributing the VirtuSRX across physical hypervisors, or by supporting more virtual resources, so more CPUs, more memory, if you like. We got the know-how for doing this one. We have been doing this one on the high-end SRX, the parallel computing, and also the small branch SRX is capable of sharing multiple CPU cores to work as one logical firewall, providing additional performance. All right, so the next part is about security intelligence. What is it about? Or let's start with some basis. The really basic prerequisite for the whole Juniper security intelligence is Junos Space security management, which is being built on top of Juniper Space platform. So imagine that one as some common framework for Juniper management, and then you can put on top of the management various applications. So in our case, it's the security director looking after manageability of the virtual platforms. Switching would be managed by network director, if you like. And last but not least, MX provisioning can be done by various service activator applications. There is one important attribute I'll mention later on is the SDK and API capability of the whole stuff. So meaning it can be influenced in a scalable way externally. If you look in particular into the Security Director application, it's a web-based application doing pretty much everything you would expect from security management. So it's about managing the firewall rule bases, either individual firewalls, groups. You can have some levels of inheritance, so global policies, group policies, particle firewall policies, IPsec VPN management, so easy point-and-click way how to create full meshed topologies, if you like, network address translation management, IPS management, so signature maintenance, rule-based management. This would be about the application firewall security, so usually either permitting or prohibiting some certain application, UTM in terms of web filtering, antivirus, anti-spam, and last but not least, the threat intelligent enforcement. So what is it about? The first building block of the security intelligence solution is Spotlight Secure Cloud. So it's a cloud service delivering command and control data and GeoIP data. So what is this command and control about? Whenever everything fails, so antivirus doesn't trigger, sandboxing doesn't trigger, host IPS doesn't trigger, and the malware is sort of executed on the end station and PC and device, end user device, then it may attempt to call home, to reach out to some control channel, get probably software update, instructions, and finally, possibly exfiltrate some data from your network. So it might be a last resort to stop that malware by knowing what are the usual IP addresses and URLs. This intelligence gets loaded onto customers' equipment, so on-premise equipment. Everything is merged together. So, for example, essential component of this whole solution is ability to receive own customer data. So it's not just Juniper sending the data, it's also an option of customers' own intelligence, which is coming either from your CM system, it could be DLP solution. Whenever you can get some intelligence, you can feed it into their SecIntel solution. Then the entire solution is managed by a Security Director. So there's a single point of management platform, web management, whereas you configure all the policies. And then finally, all the intelligence is distributed across infrastructure to the enforcement points. If we look more in particular into this one, right. This part aggregating the data is called Spotlight Secure Connector. It's essentially a virtual machine running a database, having the part which is connecting to outside to download the data, and also able to receive either by downloading or receiving using some API push the customer own data. Then there is a Security Director application which connects to the Spotlight Secure Connector, sets it up. Then optionally there is an application called Log Director, represented by additional virtual machine which is looking after the collection of logs, their parsing, categorization, and searching, reporting, if you like. And the whole solution is part of a so-called Junos Space Fabric. The solution is built with scalability in mind. So the idea is that this central management, centralized solution is capable of dealing with hundreds or thousands of devices, if you like. So The idea is to support either small deployments, a couple of firewalls, or the largest in the world with hundreds of or thousands of devices spread across the globe. And then, last but not least, the Intel is distributed according to settings and policies to the firewall infrastructure mentioned before. You might wonder, what is this cloud service really doing? Under the hood, it's a technology which is a pure algorithm with some human tweaking and receiving, first of all, third-party data, so RSA, MaxMind, etc., and also the Juniper intelligence gathered from our own security research. This gets fed through some sort of algorithm which we call Cascade, and that one is being distributed to the Spotlight Secure customers. If you look into use cases of the whole solution, so the first one is bot command and control mitigation. If you take a look, there is a security intelligence tab among the security policy settings, so you would find there the usual stuff like the source zone, source identity gathered from Active Directory, destination zone, application firewall settings, UTM profile setting, IPS, and security intelligence profile. Each and every security intelligence record has a threat level, which is a number between 1 and 10, meaning that 1 is least severe threat, and 10 is severe threat. These profiles are defining what to do for some certain sources and destination plus additional services. And in particular, this profile is triggering on level 8, meaning that whenever some internal resource is trying to reach out to any tagged security intelligence record, then below 8, it gets just locked and allowed. However, 8 and above gets dropped with logging. Meaning the granularity is really friendly because according to asset importance, it can be really fine-tuned. So probably engineering department might have a more strict profile than, I don't know, whatever public internet access, for example. So there can be dozens of such profiles matching individual sources of access. When I took this screenshot, the database had like 200K, 200,000 IP addresses, and about 20K URL numbers. So imagine that during each and every connection setup, the firewall has to look through this table and take some decision whether permit or drop. Of course, the stuff has influence on the connection setup rate of the firewall, but at Juniper we are doing the parallel computing, so if there would be a chance that the CPS is not anymore coping with the customer demands, you can always add some additional card, and the performance would be spread all over the device, again, possibly bringing it up to speed. Very easy use case number 2 is the GeoIP. So there is a list of well-known prefixes bound with individual countries. We are easily creating object representing the countries, either negated or the list can be used in the security policy. Very easy, straightforward. Use case number 3 is a way how to easily automate the firewall rule base. By automation, I mean to avoid the need for doing some changes and saving them and possibly loading them onto a firewall. With the Juniper SecIntel solution, there can be some sort of dynamic object which is then represented by a flat text file on a server. So periodically, the management is downloading the flat text file, looking for hosts, prefixes, ranges, and putting that one into the object. You might wonder what is the scale of this one. We are scaling up to 1 million objects. So 1 million records can be put into the text file. So it can either act like some blacklist solution, so possibly governmental blacklists, some recommended blacklists from whatever security companies, whatever you can imagine. Or in the second case, if you need to do some sort of exception to the GeoIP list, some list of permitted countries, there is nothing easier than just to put the IP address into a flat text file. It gets loaded onto the firewall at scale. My favorite use case is following. It's use case number 4, API push example. So there are some Python scripts which can be called from a shell script, if you like, simplifying the operation. And this shell script is propagating into the Spotlight connector IP address record, whether to add the record, remove, update with a defined timeout and threat level. So whatever intelligence gathering the data can take decisions and load it into the security intelligence. The thing can work, for example, as follows. There are 2 profiles, SE-8 and -6. This one is triggering at the level of 6 and above. That one is triggering 8 and above, meaning that if there is a threat reported as number 4, all the services in the matching policies like HTTP, FTP are permitted, locked. If the attack is escalated by the update command to level 6, only SSH stays permitted. If the escalation is going further, like to level 8, 9, or above, also the SSH is denied. So without any security policy modifications installed, the security device can take actions within sort of seconds, tens of seconds, for the incoming connections. Any questions regarding this one? Good, very well. One of the few last slides is some platform which can perform the task for the security intelligence. I picked intently SRX 5400. I think it's a quite nice box based on MX 240 with 4 slots, giving you an option to use either 2 processing cards, for example, delivering maximum IPS performance, or 2 input-output cards delivering the maximum firewall throughput. So there are figures. I mean, there's no point in discussing probably the datasheet values. But there's one remarkable thing about this platform. It's a device where you can use 10G interfaces. If the 10G is not good enough, it can be swapped out, or you can add easily 40G interfaces. If there is a need for GE interfaces, there is a card with 20 gig SFPs. I think even acting like a tree rate, so 100 meg, 10 megs. And last but not least, there is even 100G card for this platform. So it's a device supporting really broad selection of Ethernet media in a compact, sort of compact 5-rack unit platform, delivering some decent performance up to 240 gigs, if you like. All right. Regarding automation, EasyPython was part of Uwe's presentation earlier today. It was one of the columns in the overview slide. Essentially, what I want to mention is that if you take those 7 Python lines, that one is permitting load of a particle configuration file onto any Juniper platform. So as simple like this. It's very simplified. In a real world, there would be probably sort of exception handling if there is any trouble during commit check, during commit, or even during the locking stage. But this is the most simple way how to load externally part of configuration onto a Juniper platform. Then also, I was speaking about the Juno space management. If you need to deal with hundreds, tens, or simply many devices in parallel, it could be simply too cumbersome to connect to each and every device on an individual basis. At some point in time, if there is a central management in the picture, it might be wise to speak with the central management using APIs, either the APIs related to the platform settings or APIs related to security policies, not policies, etc. And then the central management can take care about distributing the new settings all over. So today at Juniper, we are heavily looking into all this automation matters. And finally, last but not least, what could be our next step? Frankly speaking, we as Juniper are not really datasheet beasts. We are maybe way too honest in our datasheets, more than the others. But what we are happy to do is to show the devices. So if you are looking into some firewall selection, there are many dimensions of the things. So usually dimensions are consisting of like how many new connections per second can be set up and closed. What is the PPS rate? What happens if you enable additional services? What happens if the traffic is spread all over 10,000 policies? So there are really bits and bytes behind the firewall and the whole platform testing. And what we are happy to offer is a test. So we have a lab. The nearest one is located in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And there are really professional testers. So equipment capable of creating heavy load, even application load. APS can be evaluated, NG, App ID, so application detection, you name it. The things can be really deeply evaluated and tested. And then based on test criteria, preferably if there is a common test plan for all the vendors, the selection can be made, which is way above possibilities of just evaluating datasheets. So my offer to you is speak with us, speak with our partners, DISTs, and we are happy to run some evaluations of the platforms and show you what is the reason why the Juniper platforms are found at the biggest data centers at service providers. There's a good reason, and usually it's the performance and the robustness. All right, that was my last slide. So thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll be around for a while, and see you next time. Thank you.